What happened at a wedding that made it obvious that the bride and groom shouldn't be getting married? My sister-in-law got married last fall, and after the ceremony they got in an epic fight over the marriage certificate and didn't come to the reception until 2 hours after it started. A week later, they separated for a few weeks while trashing each other on Facebook. They're still together, and she's now pregnant. Edit. I also photographed this wedding, and it was the most stressful professional experience I've ever had. I forgot to mention too that the groom and groomsmen dropped a bunch of acid before the ceremony and continued into the reception. He freaked out, had a panic attack, and left. When the priest equivalent said you may kiss the bride, she turned so that it would be a kiss on the cheek. Even as a child, that set off alarm bells. They have been divorced for a long time. On their first dance, he kept trying to kiss her, and she would avoid it very subtly. I noticed that, and thought I don't think she loves him. I wasn't wrong. They divorced within the first year. During the cake cutting he smashed cake in her face. She immediately started crying, and went to the bathroom for about 30 minutes. Then they got into a huge fight and barely spoke the rest of the night. Shockingly they are still married, but they still fight all the time. She's my friend from college, so we keep in touch occasionally. She never has good things to say about him. We were good friends with a couple who fought all the time. She wanted to get married desperately, and he was indifferent. After years of nagging he finally proposed. On the day of the wedding, right before he walked out, he looked at us and sighed. Well, maybe now she will stop nagging at me and finally be effing happy. They are now divorced. She cheated on him with some guy she used to date. The bride got so drunk that the bar cut her and everyone else off. The groom was also drunk. People started leaving at midnight, and the bride got mad and yelled about how they were all ruining her wedding because she wanted to dance and drink more. I was their designated driver to get them to their hotel. The entire drive there, they fought. She berated him. He cried. That was a long 20-minute drive. I could have scrubbed the vomit out with cleaners, but the awkwardness has stained that car forever. They've been together 7 years. Their daughter, born 9 months after the wedding, is adorable. My good friend was marrying this guy. We will call him Ned. Ned definitely had a drinking problem that everyone swept under the rug. He promised my friend he would keep it under wraps for the wedding. He made it down the aisle, but by the reception he was binge drinking. By then end of the night the groom Ned completely disappeared. No one could find him. A few nervous laughs turned into mild panic when the lights were turned on in an effort to find him. My husband decided to go look for him in the parking lot, where he finds Ned on his lips in the dirt. He had smoked a joint and got the spins. My husband tried to talk sense into him, reminding him this is your wedding, dude. He got Ned to come inside and did the most cringy walk of shame past the bride's family, who was very cross with him. Ned was supposed to drive them 11 miles from the venue to their hotel in bride's grandfather's vintage Corvette. He was too drunk to drive, so the bride's grandfather drove them, and the bride had to sit on the middle armrest with no seatbelts. Grandpa drops them at the hotel. Bride barely gets groom up to the room, where he passes out on the bed. Bride had to wander the halls looking for someone to help her out of her wedding dress, since her groom was passed out drunk. The word annulment was definitely floating around that next morning. As crushed as the bride was, she stuck it out. 3 years later they are now separated and divorcing because he is still a drunk. My brother's wedding. It was super uncomfortable and awkward during their engagement. My parents kept asking him if he was sure. He said yes. Then came the wedding. Super small. When they said to kiss, they both went in for a peck, but she turned her face at the last minute, so he kissed her cheek. My husband yelled for them to do it again. I was also their wedding photographer and he knew I didn't get a good shot. The marriage only got weirder and worse from there. They acted like they were on an awkward first date every day. Finally a year later they divorced. Husband disappeared 2 hours into a 6-hour reception because he was bored. Just went into the house and hung out on his phone. It was a chill ranch thing with games and drinking and dancing. Adults only. Also I didn't meet him until the wedding while me and the bride, hung out pretty frequently. So there was some lead up to that, didn't help. He wasn't cheating, just watching golf videos. Edit. Also they lasted less than 2 months. Second edit for clarity. They didn't divorce because of that. Dude 180'd as soon as the ring was on. Going golfing every night for hours with different groups of people. She asked him to limit it to a couple times a week. She suggested therapy. He blew her off. She got out and is much happier. The wedding was semi-destination, 6 hours away. His friends drove out there and he ditched them too. The reception was more bonfire way with free booze and yard games. Stuff both of them had done before with his friends. He bounced right after the obligatory wedding stuff when we finally got to do fun things. I could try and psychoanalyze what he was thinking, but who knows? Probably some kind of regret. The groom had his car stolen on the morning of the wedding and spent the whole day swearing and punching inanimate objects because, as we all heard 1,000 times that day, not only was it the most important thing in his life, it also wasn't insured. The wedding was at a Boy Scout hall for no apparent reason, and the reception was in the cafeteria at one of those underwater world places with the glass tunnel, but no one was allowed to go see the fish because, get this, the whole day had a Lion King theme. Then towards the end of the night the bride beat one of the bridesmaids half to death because she caught her effing a groomsman who she tearfully admonished for cheating on her. I have no idea how long the marriage lasted for. I never saw or heard from them again. Not so much evidence that they shouldn't have been together, but evidence that my sister-in-law is just a horrible, thoughtless person. The wedding was supposed to start at 3 p.m. At 3, she was getting in a bathtub in her hotel room to unwind before starting to get ready. All of us bridesmaids were already ready. I had to call my mom and tell her that we were at least an hour out. My brother was there waiting already. Oh, and it was October, Halloween, around 40 degrees Fahrenheit and windy, and it was an outdoor wedding in a park with no indoor venue attached. Their poor guests ended up waiting more than an hour and a half. The divorce papers have been filed and should be final within a few months. A wedding guest looking out of the window beamed at the groom waiting at the altar and said, "She's here," and the groom jokingly pretended to run away. It went down like a lead balloon because he had actually run away the previous year, literally went out to the shops and didn't come back for 8 weeks while she was pregnant with their first child. The bride's mother gave him a look that would have wilted the wedding flowers, and happy chatter in the room turned to frosty silence just in time for the entrance of the bride. They are still together many years later and have had more children together, but I wouldn't describe them as happily married. The wedding was fake. Bride and groom were quite young and dated happily for several months. Bride was in a hurry to settle down, I think to fit in with our friendship group who had or were doing the same, and pushed for engagement, and groom was reasonably happy to oblige, but not ready to take the next step and wanted a long engagement. Bride began pushing to set wedding dates almost immediately. Groom's mother and father were unwell with both physical and mental health issues. Getting closer to the wedding date, groom made it known that he loved bride but wasn't ready to settle down yet. Bride wasn't having any of it and complained to her own immediate family about this, who started harassing groom's parents about how he's a dog, mistreating their daughter, etc. Groom agrees to go ahead with the wedding if bride's family leave his parents alone. Wife wasn't happy with this and called the celebrant to talk some sense into him. Celebrant refused to perform a wedding where one party wasn't on board. Bride insisted the event go ahead and that they pretended was real, but with a bunch of guests who had been married or attended weddings recently, we all immediately noticed the celebrant didn't say the words legally required for marriage. Edit. In Australia, evidently this isn't a requirement elsewhere, and no paperwork was signed. Groom's parents refused to attend the reception, leaving table 1 half empty and not paying for the bar service. Guests took back their gifts. Bride and groom avoided each other the entire time except for a super awkward first dance. The whole thing was super surreal and awkward. They split up a couple of months later. Bride kept telling anyone who'd listen that she booked the wedding through Groupon and it was super cheap. They hadn't planned to get married until she saw the deal online. Not sure how long it lasted, but she posted a sarcastic comment about how successful her marriage was on Facebook on her first anniversary using the memories feature. Well, at her bachelorette party she broke down, drunk, and told us that she knew she shouldn't marry him and that she knew it wouldn't work. We begged her not to go through with it, but she did. On the day of the wedding, his uncle pulled him aside and said, "You don't have to do this." While counting out $100 bills, the wedding was delayed due to a storm. This caused the bride to get angry and snap at everyone who even tried to talk to her. Finally the storm let up and the wedding took place. Mid-reception the bride angrily stormed out of the reception, and that kind of broke up the festivities. No, they are not still married. She started cheating on her husband less than a year in, and they divorced shortly thereafter. Well, the wedding was in his parents' lounge. It was a quickie wedding, and she was 8 months pregnant, both very young. He paused partway through his vows and said, "I love my child, that's why I'm doing this." Then he cried. I tried to stop it, told him not to do it out of obligation to the child. He said he had to. She glared at me, and his parents were furious at me. They got married, had 3 kids, cheated on each other all through their marriage. He's with someone else now, and both have kids to other people. She's a single mom now, but he cheated on his new partner with her, and they tried to make it work before giving up again and reverting back to him going back to his partner and her being single. One of my wife's sorority sisters got married recently. We are not that close and I don't know the groom, but every time I've seen her she's been belligerently drunk. At her wedding reception, she got blackout drunk and thought it would be funny to hide under a table. But then she spilled wine on her dress and started crying. New husband tried to get her to come back out and socialize and she ended up smashing a glass into his face and sending him to the ER. She almost bragged about it when she told the story, like a "no one tells me what to do" kind of thing. They were going to get a divorce, but ended up getting pregnant instead. Thanks for watching guys. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for more Reddit videos.